Welcome to Your Success Podcast. We give you actionable insight and stories behind real-life success wherever you go. Here are your hosts, Angelos and Mo.
Welcome to Your Success Podcast. I'm Angelos.
And I'm Mo. To introduce our guest on today's podcast, we're going to read a short excerpt from his website. So we'll do that now. In the early hours of Christmas Eve 2007, Royal Marine Commando Mark Ormrod was out on a routine foot patrol in the Helmand Province of Afghanistan when he stepped on and triggered an improvised explosive device. Thanks to the swift action of the men around him and the intervention of the medical emergency response team, he was airlifted via helicopter to an emergency field hospital in a desperate attempt to try and save his life.
An innovative and dangerous procedure carried out on board a Chinook helicopter en route to the hospital did save his life. He woke up 3 days later in the UK in Selly Oak Hospital in Birmingham, both legs amputated above the knee and his right arm amputated above the elbow. He was the UK's first triple amputee to survive the Afghanistan conflict.
During his recovery, the doctors told him that he'd never walk again and that he should prepare himself for the rest of his life in a wheelchair.
Now, it would have been understandable for Mark to bitterly withdraw into a state of anger and depression and to resign himself to live life on the sidelines. It would have been easier for him to cash in his disability pension and whittle away the days, forever regretting the decision to join the Royal Marines and to deploy to Afghanistan. But he didn't. To the contrary, he used his setback as a springboard for growth and reinvention.
Today, Mark is an internationally acclaimed motivational speaker, a peak performance coach, and the author of the award-winning autobiography Man Down. He is a source of daily inspiration for the thousands of people who follow him on social media. He has 3 children, a beautiful wife, and an insatiable lust for life. He is a relentless charitable fundraiser and a daredevil who has performed stunts that many able-bodied athletes would find daunting.
So he has not used a wheelchair since June the 9th, 2009, and he jokes about the fact that children call him Iron Man because of his high-tech prosthetic legs. As well as a peak performance coach, he is a mentor and a role model to other amputees and an ambassador for the Royal Marines Association. His sense of humour is only equalled by his sense of wonder, love for learning and love for life.
Mark turned his personal tragedy into an ongoing story of personal success, and he is now committed to helping others who may have suffered setbacks or feel they are not yet achieving their maximum potential to take charge of their lives, unleash their personal power and live a life with #NoLimits. Mark, absolutely incredible, inspiring story, which we're going to delve more into. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you guys for having me. This is a beautiful office that you guys have here. The best one I've been in so far.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're right by the marina with the sun going down. Absolutely brilliant setting here. So Mark, this podcast is all about success, but we try to be a bit different and broaden our horizons past just making loads of money and buying loads of stuff. We like to interview people who are successful in all areas of life in order to inspire and educate our listeners, whatever they want to do in life. So thank you again for joining us today. Let's start at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Did you always want to become a Royal Marine?
No, in short. So the quick version of the story is I'm about 15 and a half. I've got GCSE exams coming up 6 months' time, and I just had this epiphany that once they were over, I had to make a choice. Did I want to go into the big bad world and work, or did I want to carry on with education? Now, I actually enjoyed school. I did pretty well in those exams, 9 A to C's, 1 D, so I could have easily gone on to further education. But I kind of knew that wasn't for me. Naturally, it wasn't where I wanted to go. So I decided I would do the best I could, jump out into the big bad world, and then try and figure things out and be an adult. Now, I had a gut instinct that I didn't just want a job, I wanted a career. And so I spent a little bit of time thinking about it and kind of narrowed my options down to the kind of things that I naturally gravitated towards, which were, in my words, like the alpha male job. So it was the police, the fire brigade, or the military. Now, I was born and bred in Plymouth, and bizarrely, I had never heard of the Royal Marines. I decided from the 3 that I wanted a career in the military. And so, like most 15 and a half, 16-year-olds, you think of a soldier, you think of the army. Mm-hmm. So back then, it was down at Mount Wise, was where the career centre was. I walked down there with a friend of mine who was in the very early stages of his army career. We spoke to the recruiting sergeant major down there. He gave me the information. I came back, looked it all over. And then, before I went down to handle the paperwork, I found out I had an uncle who just lives up in Buckfast-Lee, who was a captain in the Royal Marines. So I went up to see him. We had a chat. He told me the differences between the Army and the Royal Marines. I then went back to the Career Centre, spoke to the Royal Marine recruiting sergeant major. He sat me down and showed me, it's going to make me feel old, but the VHS, not a DVD, of the Royal Marines. And from that minute, sat in that chair, that I was sold. You know, these guys were just, you know, they could go in by sea, by land, by air, by foot. In the Arctic, the jungle, the desert, they'd operate anywhere, you know, by any means at the drop of a hat. It was just like the ultimate flexible soldier, and to me, the ultimate test. And so that was it. I was sold then, 16 years old, you know, forms filled in, waiting for a date, and then went from there.
And it's not easy being a Royal Marine or training to become
Well,
a Royal Marine.
I was going to say, actually, what about the selection process? So even before you even get in, right, it's not an easy thing to get into?
So there's a 3-day course you go on first called the PRMC, which is the Potential Royal Marines course, or if you're an officer, the POC, Potential Officer course. And it is basically, can I lightly cuss?
Yeah, you can heavily cuss if you want.
It's a 3-day ass whipping.
Right.
You just go up to Lympstone when you do your basic train anyway, and you just get fragged for 3 days solid. And that is an opportunity for the training team to see if you're ready and if you have what it takes to progress to 32 weeks of training. Back when I did it was just 30. Or, you know, it's an opportunity for you as an individual to say, actually, maybe this isn't for me. I've had a taste of it, don't like it, I'll try something different. So I went up there, did the 3 days, passed it. It literally was just a case of just keep going, like for 3 days solid. You know, you're throwing up and you want to stop and your arms are shaking and you can't, but you just got to keep on trying, because that's all they wanted to really see. It's the guy that keeps on pushing. So I did that. And
was there any times during that you thought, it's not for me? Or you just, the whole time you were...
The hardest thing for me was being 16 years old, and I've only gone 45 minutes up the road, but it felt like I was on the other side of the world. Yeah. I'm in a room full of strangers and I'm so young, and you got, you know, 30-year-old men, and I just felt so lost with these guys that seemed so much more experienced in life than I was.
And the Royal Marines have the longest basic training in all the world.
Yeah, I hate saying this, like when I go out and do speeches and I explain to people, it's the longest and hardest regular forces training in the world. You know, special forces is obviously longer and harder, but for regular forces, it is the longest and hardest.
And that's why they're an elite fighting force.
Exactly, yeah.
So when you were looking at the Army versus the Royal Marines, you wanted to go for the harder option to push yourself, right?
It was that. I wanted to physically test myself and mentally test myself to see if I could make the grade. But there was also the flexibility of it. So, you know, if I had a passion for cooking, I could finish my training and become a chef. But then if I deployed an operation, I'd go back to being a rifleman. You know, so in the Army, if you go and you become a chef, then that's what you do for your whole career. You don't pick up a rifle again unless you're being tested. You know, so I like the flexibility of that, where I could have a specialisation, which I could go out and do the very best I could in. But maybe if it wasn't as warrior as I'd like, I could revert back to that in an operational situation and then do that, what I actually joined up to do in the first place.
So fast forward 30 odd weeks, you get your green lid.
Mm-hmm.
What happens next?
Then there was a big anticlimax, because I ended up on the gate at Lympstone doing security duties. So, you know, you've done all this training and you're, you know, the fittest you've ever been, and you're keen. I was 18 years old, just keen to get out there and do everything I could. And I ended up stood with my rifle at Lympstone, freezing, you know, because at the end of the year, it's like October, November time, just freezing, waiting for a course to come up. It was quite good actually. I got involved in a new recruiting video they did, so they were shown in the cinemas at the time, so we got to do a bit of that. And then
were you one of the people that was pulled in during the sheep dip?
So I'm in I think it's about 32 seconds in, I'm the guy right behind the actor, and as the screen freezes, you see my face in the background falling in the water.
Right, okay.
So it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Oh, the lights have gone
This
off.
isn't night ops.
Okay. It's a regular feature, yeah. And so how long was it from from that point until 2009? How long were you in the Marines for that period?
So I served my first 5 years, and I think I did what a lot of young lads did, and that was have a hell of a good time.
Yeah.
You know, I got in a little bit of trouble. We call it getting charged. It's basically like getting pulled in the boss's office with your heels together. You know, because I was having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I left after my first 5 years when my eldest daughter was born.
Okay.
I subsequently rejoined about a year later after failing miserably, trying to find work as a bodyguard after retraining in South Africa. Rejoined early 2007, was sent to 40 Commando up in Taunton, and well, I had the choice. It was back to Lympstone, which is a non-deployable unit, it's a training establishment which isn't particularly exciting, or 40 Commando who were deploying to Afghanistan. So I chose 40 Commando, went up there, joined the unit. They were already in the infancy of their pre-deployment training. It's about 6-7 months training for a 6-month deployment. So I just kept very quiet. Was the grey man, made some friends, joined my troop, my company, got involved in the training, and then deployed at the tail end of 2007.
So just diving into that then, Mark, you wanted to be deployed. You were itching, is that correct? When you're saying you wanted to use the skills and training that you've put in for so long and see what you were like in action?
You know, because I finished my training, and you know, I trained in Norway a couple of times doing Arctic warfare training. I deployed to Iraq on Operation Telet 1 in 2003 when we first invaded Iraq. Came back quite disappointed with my experience. It wasn't what I expected. I got a really good tan, but I didn't fire any rounds in anger or defence or anything. And so when this came around, I thought, right, let's see what this is about, see how different this is, you know, and again, test myself, see if I'm up to scratch, and if these skills, if I can put them into action when it really matters. You know. So
what's the feeling like when you're waiting on sort of deployment? Is you're itching to get out there? Are there some people that are more reserved and don't want to go abroad, or how does that? Because that's quite kind of unfamiliar, I suppose, territory. How does that feel?
I think most people are just in a state of anger with the RAF, cancelling the flights all the time.
Right.
Just kind of sitting around in an RAF base for ages. But
watching them gel their hair and all
exactly,
that. Looking pretty.
Exactly. In their air-conditioned porta cabins,
doing their nails.
I think it's an individual thing.
Yeah.
You know, I was calm about it all. Most of the people that I was with were calm about it, and then you see people change. You know, because when you go out there, it's not like you hit the ground and you've got a knife in between your teeth and you're running around dodging bullets. You go to, you know, initially to a place called Camp Bastion, which, and I don't know if this was just someone, you know, having me on or whatever, but apparently you're statistically more likely to get shot and killed in Liverpool than you're on Camp Bastion.
It's a rough place up there, mate.
I know,
it's really rough.
So, you know, some guys would spend their tour there and they'd be happy with that, but others would want to go out into the thick of it. And then when you get out there, you know, and the bullets do start coming, the bombs and all that lot, then you see people change slightly.
Yeah. So, Mark, most listeners probably won't have trained or have experienced any kind of combat, except if they live in Liverpool. Can you just explain to your average civilian what it feels like? You've got your wife, you've got your family at home. You know, you are putting yourself into harm's way. How do you override that basic human instinct of self-preservation to go out there and do these very difficult things?
It's all about your perspective, I think. You know, we were there to do a job, which we were very good at doing, and from my point of view, that's all it was. You know, I was out there. You kind of have to shelve home. You can't spend time thinking about it too much because you lose your focus, and it's a very dangerous environment. You need to be on the ball the whole time out there, you know, looking after yourself, but also all your mates. So, you know, people ask questions that all the time, but it was just a job, you know, one that we all enjoyed and we were all very good at.
Yeah. And there's a lot of camaraderie out there. Yeah,
it's massive. You know, I mean, just one example. I'm never going to do this again in my life, but I remember being crashed and woken up at like 3 a.m, running down to the sentry box that we had responsibility for, putting a helmet on, and all I had on was a pair of flip-flops, pants and a helmet, and I'm in a firefight at 3 o'clock in the morning. Where you ever want to do that again and form those kind of bonds with people, you know? And then we're just hysterically laughing at the end of it, looking around at each other, breathing heavy, there's shell casings all over the floor, you know, you've just neutralised an enemy attack, you know, in the pitch black, and you're in your underpants. And it's like, what the hell just happened? Then you go back to sleep once the adrenaline wears off.
Yeah.
So yeah, you form some crazy bonds and lifelong friendships.
So how long were you at Afghanistan before the incident happened?
So we deployed September 7th, and I was injured Christmas Eve. So I still get a lot of abuse for only doing half a tour off the lads. I didn't finish up.
Any excuse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so halfway through, like 3.5 months.
So let's talk a bit about that. So what do you remember of the explosion, or the timeline leading up to it, and then the actual explosion itself? And you talk to us about that.
So I remember everything.
Right.
We were tasked, it's Christmas Eve, we were going to have, I think, 2 or 3 days R&R after that where we could open our mail and, chill out as much as you possibly could in that situation. So we got sent on a very basic routine foot patrol just to maintain momentum, because you're always we call it dicking, we're always being dicked, which is watched by the enemy. So you've got to, no matter what's happening, you've got to kind of put on a show, in effect, and say, no matter if morale's through the floor, you've got to be out there putting boots on the ground so they can see that and not look for an opportunity to attack. So everything was going fine. Morale was fine. We were being very successful at what we were doing. No one had been hurt to that point in any way. So we went out to do this patrol where we weren't supposed to push any more than like 200 metres from the perimeter of our camp. Whereas leading up to that, we'd been out for miles and for hours and hours at a time, but it was literally 2 sections would leave the rear entrance of our camp, one go north, one go south. We would then patrol around the perimeter, engaging with the civilians in the villages around there, gathering intelligence, looking for any suspicious signs of enemy activity, that kind of stuff. Then we would meet at the front entrance, so now the opposite side of camp, secure that location, come back in, and then finish up. So it was that basic, and everything we'd done up to that point was a lot more intricate than that. It was just a show of presence and a way to keep momentum. So we did that, we left the rear entrance, section I was went north, the other guys went south, and about 4.5 hours into it when we were ready to finish, the section that I was in were on a really high piece of ground, like a ridge line, and then beneath us was the camp that we were working out of, and then beneath that, farther still, was the other section we left with. So because we were so high up, we could, kind of like where we are now, we could see everything around us for a decent 2-mile radius maybe. And if we were attacked, or the other guys were attacked, it's a lot easier going downhill than it is up.
Yeah.
So our job before we finished was to give protection for that other section.
Yeah.
So they could peel into camp, get behind the perimeter wall, they could then give us protection, we'd come down off this feature, go back in, finish up. So it's a simple job. So we got there. The guy in charge took half the section where he needed them and started giving them positions. I was second in command, so I took the rest of the guys. I jumped into a shallow crater about 4 or 5 metres to my front. The guys all started taking their positions, they knew what they were doing. I had picked my position, somewhere between the 2 halves of the section, so because if the guy in charge for whatever reason couldn't do his job, then I have to jump in. And then when they were all positioned, my half, I walked over to where I was going to take up my fire position. I went to get on my stomach, and as my right knee hit the deck, that was when I knelt on and detonated the IED.
Wow.
So yeah.
What can you explain what that is actually as an object?
So this one specifically, we were working with American Special Forces guys, and they went in after and they cleared the area and they wrote a report on it. So it was actually an anti-personnel mine, which, if you didn't know, it is only designed to maim. So it'll blow a foot off, and then when the rest of your section come to save you, that's usually when someone pops over the hill with an AK-47 and takes everyone out. So that's what it's designed to do. But on top of it, they had put the warhead of a 107mm Chinese rocket, like a shoulder-launched rocket, which would take the side of a house off. So I knelt on this warhead. The warhead put pressure on the mine. The 2 metal plates in the mine touch. That causes the explosion. The mine explodes. The warhead explodes. I explode.
So you're actually, in some respects, incredibly fortunate to be alive from that.
The only logical way I can think it happened was because we were in this bowl. It was maybe at some sort of an angle, because if it came straight up, I literally would have been a pink cloud, and that's it. It would have incinerated me completely. It must have been at like a 45-degree angle or something when it exploded. As I put my arm down and my knee down, which is why injured me the way it did. Because if it had gone straight up, then I'd have been gone.
So what do you remember of that moment? Was there a sound, a pressure? Can you talk about that experience of what happened?
So obviously that's a huge bang. The ground in Afghanistan is very dusty and sandy, so there was a huge dust cloud created. And initially, the thing exploded. My brain is literally rattling around in my head. I can't see anything. I'm temporarily blind. I can hear all the other guys shouting and screaming at each other, trying to figure stuff out and figure out what went on. And my initial reaction, my gut instinct, was that we had been attacked. I thought someone had fired an RPG at us or something that had hit close by, caused a sand cloud. And in my mind, I was thinking, right, figure out where this attack came from, start laying the rounds down, bring all the lads on, and then we'll just, cut down that area and then get back safely. Hopefully we had a big HMG in camp which could have just tore anything to pieces, and that would have been what saved us. Now, where I couldn't see temporarily when I was blinded, what I remember is saying to myself to turn around, because behind me, about 400 or 500 metres, right down below us where the other section where there was a small rectangular forestry block, and everything around it was flat mud fields. So my thinking was, if anyone's going to attack us, that's where they're going to do it from, unless they're an idiot. No one's going to run in the open field and do it. So I was saying, turn around, when this dust cloud settles and I can see, find him, start laying the rounds down, like I said, and then bring everyone on, and we'll try and get out before anyone gets hurt. Now, while I still couldn't see, probably 5 times I'd said it in my mind, turn around, turn around, turn around. And then I just stopped, and I realised that although my brain was telling my body to do something, my body wasn't reacting. I couldn't figure out why. So I thought, the only thing I can do is wait for this dust cloud to settle, look at what's going on around me, and then make an assessment on the ground and figure something out. And then as it settled and disappeared, that's when obviously I looked down to my legs and they were gone, completely gone.
So you would think that the pain would kick in at that point. So were you not in agony?
No. Your body is phenomenal. Like right now, if I got a bit of paper and said, I'm going to give you a paper cut, it would hurt because you're anticipating it. But if you weren't looking, I just went, you probably wouldn't feel it. And that was the same as that. If I knew I was going to jump on a mine, it probably would have hurt a lot more. But because I didn't know, and my adrenaline had spiked and my brain was going crazy trying to figure stuff out, and I'm looking around and my adrenaline's so high, that dealt with it. And all it felt like was a really intense pins and needles throbbing in 3 limbs. And there wasn't any real pain until just before the medic got to me. And then he shot me with morphine, so it kind of dealt with that.
Was anyone else injured in that explosion? Or?
There was one of the other guys, Stu, got shrapnel in his back, but it wasn't life-threatening. So in that situation, we are trained not to let your emotions take control of you and go running in trying to help the guy, because you risk setting off other devices. So everyone's pre-assigned tasks. So one guy's on the radio, one guy's coordinating defence. Whoever's closest to you will take out a bayonet and very slowly and methodically clear a way to you, marking a path. So when the medic gets there, he can run straight in without risking hurting himself and deal with you. So everyone, when I say phenomenal, what they did, I don't use that word lightly. Everyone just remained calm, did exactly what they were supposed to do. And that's probably why I'm here now. The medic got to me. He shot me with morphine. It got a bit gross then after that bit. I had to pick my own foot up off the floor and put it on my stomach. It was kind of still attached to my right leg by a muscle. So where he dragged me, the weight of the foot, my foot was still in my boot, but there was no shin, and it kind of stretched like a tendon.
And had your sight come back at that point so you could see that?
Oh yeah, I could see all that. Then he took me off this feature we were on, put me in the back of a vehicle, and then when the vehicle was going up an incline to go into the camp where the helicopter would meet us, I fell out the back, and the guy driving swang around, put his arm out and grabbed my femur bone to keep me in. I didn't feel any pain though, because I was completely off on morphine. And then when we got to the helicopter landing site, I blacked out when the helicopter landed, which is when they told me I was dead, because they felt me for a pulse, didn't have one, there were no veins to put fluids in, and they put a respirator on me which didn't steam up. So they actually pushed me in a corner and left me while they got to work on the other guy who had the shrapnel in his back. Because as horrible as it sounds, in that situation, when you have a dead guy and a guy that's dying, you have to just ignore the dead guy because you might have 2 dead guys. So they did all the vital signs checks. I had nothing, so they just shipped me in a corner, waiting for a body bag, and they got to work on Stu. It was only when one of the medics walked past me to get some equipment to work on Stu that they saw my eye fluttering, which meant my heart was beating. So they then alerted some of the other guys, and they performed a procedure on me which had, I think it had only been cleared to be used 3 days prior to this incident by the top brass in the medical field, and it had never been used on a casualty before, not a live one anyway. And they basically took a couple of drills, and they drilled into my hips from the front and back, put an intravenous line in, and they said within about 3 minutes I was awake again. And actually, you know, they were asking me questions, and I wasn't just babbling, I was coherently answering what it was they were asking me. So, pretty lucky.
That's incredible.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. You must have lost a lot of blood, right, through that?
Altogether, blood and plasma and whatever else it is they pump back into you, it was 28 pints.
Wow.
I think they were just pumping it in, it was just falling back out, and they were just literally flushing me through as I was going.
And your thoughts at this time?
I don't remember anything. The last thing I remember is the helicopter landing and this big sandstorm being created from the propeller blades, and I blacked out, which I remember being very relaxing and peaceful, just kind of like drifting off to sleep.
Yeah.
And then I just woke up 3 days later back in the UK.
And what happened then?
So I arrived back home, well not home, in Birmingham, early hours Christmas Day. I woke up from a drug-induced coma on the 28th of December for about 15 seconds. And it's just like what you see in those, you know, in the films where the guy's looking at the ceiling and it's just blurry lights and you can't really see anything. And I remember not even having the energy to open my eyes. I remember lying there, sort of coming conscious and trying to focus all my energy into my eyelids, and I still couldn't open them. I was that heavily sedated and just weak. And I could hear everyone around me, all my, you know, my now wife and everyone. And every time they said something, it would like echo because of the drugs I was on. I actually proposed to Becky then when I woke up briefly, and then I fell back to sleep and was out of it.
What was her reply?
She said yeah. She said yeah. Morphine will not get you out of a marriage proposal.
And did the echo around in your brain?
I was gone. I literally. Imagine trying to every bit of energy you could muster, trying to focus it into your eye, and then it just exhausted me for like 15 seconds, and I was out again.
Yeah. And then when you next woke up?
They reduced the medication gradually to bring you out of that, and so I spent another 4 days then in the intensive care ward with 24/7 medical care, because obviously when the blast went off there were bits of flesh that were torn off and sand and dirt gets into it, and there's a big infection risk. So they had to make sure that I didn't die from any infections. They monitored me 24 hours a day. After a week in intensive care, I moved up to what was called the Burns and Plastics ward in a single high dependency room for constant monitoring, and then they would gradually bring me out of that hazy. I wasn't in a coma then, I was out of it then, but I was still heavily medicated, and they used the opportunity to gradually bring me off of it, not only so I could naturally deal with the pain and start to get used to it, but mentally so I could figure out what was going on and accept it, rather than just go cold turkey and be, you know, shock or capture. So
did you feel at that point that you were sort of, you realised you were going to live a life without legs and things like that, or were you kind of grateful at that point to be alive? How was your headspace at that kind of time?
Do you know, when I woke up, the first thing I was thinking when I was compos mentis and could kind of think clearly was, I'm still a Royal Marine, you know, I still wear a green beret, I'm still serving the military, and I remember thinking I've got over 300 years of history on my shoulders, and if I crimp and, you know, start crying about this, I'm going to let down thousands of people that have gone before me. And, you know, I had a lot of pride in being a Royal Marine. I passed that course when I was 17, you know, and I still had that same pride, and I thought I'm going to have to use this now to get me through it, because it's going to be tough, you know, but they teach you to live, you know, with standards like this, and I thought, well, that's what I'm going to do here too. I'm going to keep those standards, and when people come to see me, they're, you know, going to say, you're still upholding those standards, you're still doing us proud. So that was my mindset pretty much from the minute I could really think about it.
Without prying too much, Mark, but privately, you must have had down times.
So the first time they let me out of the hospital, about 3.5 weeks into it, maybe 4. Becky and all my family were staying in a welfare flat across the road in a tower block. So they pushed me over in my wheelchair, and it was nice to get fresh air because I've been cooped up in a hospital room for that long. That's what I was really thinking of. We got in the communal entrance to the tower. We got in the front entrance of the apartment, but I couldn't access any of the rooms because of how wide my wheelchair was. Being for one-handed, it's wider on the left than a regular wheelchair, and so I had to sit out in the corridor and kind of eat my dinner like a naughty kid, and I had to pee in a milk bottle so I couldn't get in the toilet, and I got to stay out that night, and we eventually figured out a way to get me into the bedroom, and the first time there was a full-length mirror in there, and when it was just me and Becky, and I kind of wheeled past it, looked at myself. That was the first time I'd properly seen myself. I'd only really seen this up in the hospital room, and I'd burst out crying. You know, I'd gone from 6'2", I was about 16 stone of just muscle, and, you know, completely fittest I've ever been. And at that point, I was, I think, without my limbs, I'm about 3.5 feet tall, and I was 9 stone 8, I think. Really gaunt, withdrawn, just fighting off infections, and I just didn't recognise myself. So I just burst out crying, you know. And then the other time after that, and I honestly tell you, there have only really been 2 times when I've been like that. And the other time was back in hospital, where one of the doctors told me that I had no chance at all of ever walking. Some guy that had been amputating people for like 30 odd years said he's never met anyone with one leg above the knee, you know, that was missing, that had success, and I was going to be in a wheelchair. And that pretty much screwed me over as well, you know, for like 4 or 5 days. You know, I didn't like hearing that, but those, hand on heart, are the only 2 times when I felt down about it.
But it's good that you share that with people, because I know you are a very strong, resilient person, but they need to know that you're also a human.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you have been through a mega amount of trauma, and it's okay to have those down days, as long as you maintain those positive, more positive than down.
I think it's very healthy to have a down day. You know, you can't fight it all the time and just keep resisting it. Sometimes bursting out crying is the most healthy thing to do, and then you draw a line under it and you're like, right, we're done now. That's 30 seconds of feeling sorry for myself. Let's focus on the other side.
That's amazing. That's really incredible. So we're going to talk about a little bit about living a life with prosthetics, but just let's talk about the rehabilitation point up to that, because obviously you've received the news that you're not going to walk again, and obviously you've got a lot of resilience. So can you talk us through that period up until the point where you got your prosthetics and what the rehabilitation period was like?
So about 5 days after that guy said that I'd never walk again, I got a visit off an army guy who was blown up in Iraq in 2005, who, both above the knee like me, who came to visit me and told me, you know, that guy's talking bullshit. You know, I can do this, I do that. And that kind of motivated me. So I used that when I got to rehab, because I knew that when I got my legs, I knew now it was possible, you know, because this guy had come in and he talked to me and told me what he did. Now, when I got there, I really underestimated it. You know, I had this kind of Royal Marines ego that I was like, well, I'm really fit, it's not going to be that hard. And I stood up in some parallel bars for the first time, and I walked one length, which is about 5 meters, and I was done. Like, done, wiped out. I had to go back to bed. It takes a double above knee amputee between 300 and 500% more energy to do anything than an able-bodied person. And so initially, that, you know, really hit me hard, and it was lit. Every day was a case of, you know, one more length, and just slowly building up, which is really, really frustrating, because you want to just hammer yourself and just keep going and keep going and keep going, but you've got to be sensible and think, if I do go, you know, at Mach 10, I can injure myself or do some damage, and then I'm going to have to take a load of time off, and I'm going to lose my progress and the momentum. So it was, next to Royal Marines training, it's probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
And how do the prosthetics attach to your legs? Is it is it screwed in, or does it just fit on with a strap, or how does that part work? It's
all completely down to you as an individual. Partly through preference, what you prefer, but then through your situation. So my left leg, the inner part of my thigh has a huge chunk of flesh missing, so I have to have what's called a silicone liner on top to make it conical, and then I'll spray a mix of alcohol, lubricant and water inside there, pull that leg on, that then dissolves and it creates a vacuum. But on my right leg, where it's clean, it's got a surgical cut, I put a bag on my leg that's like made out of parachute material with a tail on it, and just here there's an air valve. I pull the valve out and I pull the tail through, and it pulls all the fat of my leg down to the bottom and acts as a pad, and then that creates a vacuum as well. I put the valve back in, and they're both then on with suction. So
that's incredible.
And is it painful?
Not anymore. No, it used to take, I think the first time I actually did it took me an hour, 20 minutes to put them on, and I was just sweating like crazy.
Yeah.
But now I do it every day in like 5 minutes in the morning. And the arm's similar, you put a liner on there, but the arm has got like a metal nipple that comes out that ratchets in, and you have a strap on, which you move your back and your chest to operate, because I don't have an elbow. It has to be mechanically operated.
You don't use the arm every day?
I do most days. I've got several different ones. I snapped one in half yesterday in the gym. Right. I was on the pec deck and it just snapped in the back of the column. So that snapped, and I've got like a dress arm, which is my best one. I've got 2 spare ones in the garage now for like, I do cardio in the morning on my handbike, on my rower, so I've got the 2 spares. But yeah, I'm just constantly in it. I'm not wearing it now because it's, getting to the end of the day, take it off and just chill.
I've heard about phantom limb pain.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever experienced that before?
In the beginning I did, and I think I was taking 18 tablets for breakfast, 18 for dinner and 18 for lunch. Just medication to deal with that. And then what actually happened was I hooked up with some guys in America, because I found a triple amputee out there who I reached out to mentor me, because there weren't any in the UK that could have helped me get independent. And one of the things they were telling me to do before I went out there, like in the beat up training to go out there for a boot camp, was to take my legs off and, starting on a mattress, just stand on the end of my legs and put my weight through the bone, and then graduate to a pillow, a rug, a carpet, a tile floor as the pain decreased. And it was horrible. Like the first time I did it, tears were streaming down my eyes. I wasn't crying because of a moat, but just when it's so painful, you just can't. It just happens. And I was on my bed, and it was just, I was just crying because it was so painful. But then eventually it kind of deadens the nerve endings. It retrains your brain to tell you where your leg finishes, which stops it sending that pain to the toes and everything where they used to be. And it just goes. And I ditched the medication cold turkey, got rid of it about 18 months into my rehab.
Yeah.
Never used it again.
Okay. So what do you say to people, because you do a lot of talking and a lot of people no doubt will be considering a career in the armed forces,
Mm-hmm.
what do you say to people looking to do that?
I would say do your research, because it depends what you want from it. I wanted to test myself and push myself and see if I was physically and mentally capable of not only passing the training but then doing what I was trained to do. I think if I went back now, I would have done the same thing. I would have done my minimum term of 5 years, went through the training, and then purely on a professional basis of promotions and looking to the future, I probably would have transferred to like the Navy or something, because the Royal Marines are very small. It's very competitive to get promoted. It takes an average of, I think, 8 years to become a corporal. And now with the cuts they're making, you're looking more like 10 years. Whereas you could go to the Navy and you could reach that equivalent rank in 2. And then every 2, 3, subsequently get promoted again. So, but I never thought that way when I was a young guy. It was just all about fun and testing myself. I didn't care about the future, and I didn't have a family in the early stages of my career. But I would look at things differently now. I've been advising people, that exact thing this last weekend. I said, if you want to do it, do your 5 years and then look at transferring, or you can join the Navy and do the all arms course and be a naval commando. It just depends what people want, Yeah. But what I will say is there's a lot of opportunity in the military. If you don't get an education, there's a whole lot of things you can do to get, GCSEs, A levels, go on to higher education. If you're particularly gifted in sports, you can, in the army, you can wear a tracksuit your entire career. You never put on a set of combat, so you just box, play football, hockey, whatever it is. And there's a travel, you will not, and I've never found anywhere else in the world where you'll make the kind of friends that you make, like I say, running around 3 o'clock in the morning in your pants, shooting at someone. You're never going to do that. Maybe in Jesters on a night out. But, it is a great career, but you've got to get out of it what you want from it and be proactive with it. I was very reactive in my career, and I just did what I was told all the time. I never challenged anything, and I kind of regret that. And if I was doing it again, I got passed over promotion, I think unfairly at times. Now I perhaps would have questioned it, and had a bit more courage to do that and took more charge of my career. But the opportunities are pretty phenomenal, and you just got to be proactive and take them.
I think that's great advice. Yeah.
Here's a unscripted question for you, Mark.
Okay.
Would you do it again?
Honestly, I genuinely, hand on heart, believe now my life is better than it would have been had I not been injured. When I rejoined after that 5-year initial period, I rejoined very focused. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a physical training instructor. I wanted to get promoted as soon as I could. Then I was looking at going down the special forces thing to see if I wasn't confident I could have passed it at that age. I think I was 21 then, 22, but I wanted to have a go. And if things went to plan, then that's probably what I'd be doing now, which would have been phenomenal, but I probably wouldn't have had my other 2 children. I've got 3. I probably wouldn't have the other 2. I probably wouldn't have got married. I probably wouldn't have had all the opportunities that have come my way now. Just really cool stuff. I get emails about it. I just had an email just now on the way here from someone to do with the film that Mark Ormrod's just made, where the Boston guy gets his legs blown off, and I just scanned it because I was coming down here, but stuff like that. All these things come in my inbox all the time, and I get loads of cool opportunities. It means I can provide for my family. I can go out and do the things that I want to do. Whereas things would be a lot different now had I not been injured.
So you're very resilient then, basically.
Yeah, I don't want to get too tree huggy with it all, but everything happens for a reason, doesn't it? And I was injured for a reason. I was the first triple amputee for a reason. I survived for a reason. What you see with me is what you get. I don't have any other injuries. It's just literally the legs and the arm. A bit of scarring, but I've got friends who've had their intestines torn open with shrapnel and lost testicles and can no longer have kids, that kind of stuff. So I was very fortunate that none of that ever happened to me, and I guess there was a reason for that too.
So looking at it slightly more politically, do you blame anyone for this? It could be very easy to say, it's Tony Blair's fault this happened. It could be David Cameron's fault that we decided to go and invade a foreign country.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe the cause is just, and is there an element of blame in your thinking?
I wouldn't say blame. Now I'm older and wiser and I know a bit more. I think Afghanistan, to a degree, is a lost cause. It's just so hard to win something like that. But politically, I don't get bogged down too much in that about why we're there, what we're doing. I wasn't there for Tony Blair or David Cameron. I was there for the guys that I was stood fighting with, and for the people here and anywhere else in the world that can't fight for themselves. That's what I signed up to do. That's what I was there to do. I knew the risks. We all know the risks. And we're willing to take when we sign the line. So. Obviously someone somewhere up the line has made a decision, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. But I think if I focus too much on that, I just walk around a very angry person all the time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's an incredible story, and now we're going to talk about the charity work that, as you mentioned briefly before. Can you tell us a bit about that charity work and how people can find out more, where you're kind of going with it, what you want to do, those kind of things?
So I work for a charity called the Royal Marines Association, which look after Royal Marines veterans, their families, widows, bereaved families, serving and retired Royal Marines, that kind of stuff. When it comes to welfare issues, which is very fulfilling, the Royal Marines have a very strong family ethos, and I was quite lucky actually. I left in July 2010, and this job was created specifically for me. When I left, I've been doing it since September 2010, and fundraising is a big part of it as well. So over the years I've done these crazy events to raise money for not only the Royal Marines Association, the Royal Marines charity, but other military charities. Me and some friends ran across America back in 2010 from New York to LA. That's like 3,500 miles, which is pretty cool. I've hand cycled around this country. That was 3,100 miles from the Citadel all the way up to Inverness, all the way down to Land's End again and back. Stood on planes, jumped out of planes, jumped off of bridges, hiked up Ben Nevis and all this kind of stuff. Just, like I say, opportunities that come in. you have the opportunity still in this situation to test yourself, like I wanted to when I joined the military. But the great thing now is you can do it with an ulterior motive, which is to raise money and awareness for these charities. So selfishly, you're doing it to test yourself, but selflessly, you're doing it, to help others, and that's the winning combination in my mind.
So you've done pretty much more than what most able-bodied people are able to do in their whole lives.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't have a lot more free time, but I'm not. Let's make them out wrong. I'm not bogged down with a 9 to 5. I have a lot more freedom to be able to do that because, running across America to raise money is my job, and I get paid to do it. I've got a salary job with them. Jumping out of an airplane is my job, but other people would have to schedule it in, get time off work, get someone to look after the kids, and I'm very lucky in that respect that I can do that kind of stuff, and it is my job.
And all these amazing things, you give Tom Cruise a run for his money.
Well, Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
If he needs an extra, I'm always ready and willing.
And you get you get opportunities like appearing on Your Success podcast. That's
I know.
Probably one of the highlights of your.
I know that was on your bucket list for a long time.
It's ticked off now.
Yeah, so congratulations on that one.
Yeah, thank you.
You're also an author.
I am.
What inspired you to write your book? Can you tell us a little bit about it, please?
Do you want the true story?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright. So, by the time I'd rejoined the military, I'd been in the Marines, I'd earned my Green Beret, I'd been to Norway, I'd been to Warder once, I'd retrained as a bodyguard. So by the time I was 23, I had quite an interest in life already. I'd worked down Union Street as a doorman for a couple of years, so I'd seen a fair few things in the short time I've been on the planet, and I always thought, when I get to 50, I'm just going to scribble this all down on paper. I don't care if it ever gets turned into a book, I'm just going to keep it and pass it down. I must have probably done a lot more interesting things in the next 20 plus years of my life, so I'll write a book. And then when I got in rehab, in the evenings, when all the guys that had 2 arms were on the Xboxes and the PlayStations, I couldn't do it because I only had the one hand. So I had nothing to do. They had hogged the TVs, I couldn't watch telly or anything. And when I pulled through the hospital, there was a lot of media interest because I was the first triple amputee, so I had some relationships in the media. And one of the guys I was quite close with, we were just chatting on the phone one night, and I said, we should write a book. And he said, you know what, I was actually thinking that a couple of weeks ago. And so I was like, do you know what, let's just do it. I've got nothing to do in the evenings in rehab. I can't play the games, they've got the TVs, nothing for me to do. Why don't we just write this book together? And that's what we did. He would ring me up in the evenings, he would interview me for an hour. He would then go off and write it. He'd send it back to me. I put loads of curse words in it, so it sounded like it was me saying it. Lots of bootneck terminology, Royal Marine slang words. And then we just did that chapter by chapter until about 10 months later we had a book. And it wasn't written in any specific order. And by the time we put it in order, I didn't want to read it. I've never read it myself. I wrote it, but I've never read it because I just got so sick of writing it that when he put it in order, I was like, no, I'm done. I'm not reading it.
And what is your book called?
It's called Man Down, which is the first thing which is called on the radio in that situation when I was injured. It's Man Down, Man Down. So.
And that's available on Amazon?
Amazon, from my website, direct. I do signed copies through there. Car boot sales. Bargain basement in the works in town. I don't know where it is.
Audio book? You're doing an audio book?
I've done an audio book. You guys know Rav Walden? Used to present Crime Watch.
Oh yeah.
Tan guy, dark skin, really good looking.
Yeah.
So he's a friend of mine, and he did it for me a couple of years ago up in London in Soho. And I attempted it myself, and I was rubbish. So Rav did it, and he was really good. And then when it came to getting it out, I just lost communication with the studio. So it's been sat there somewhere. All finished and polished and good to go. I just can't get my hands on it.
I think you need to poke some fires on that one.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you want a couple of handsome guys with good voices to record it for you,
do you know any?
We're available. Oh no! Cold, so cold.
I mean, we're writing our book about success and what makes people successful.
Okay.
We will have an audio version, and we're looking to maybe get Morgan Freeman. God himself too.
The idol of voiceover.
Yeah. He is the absolute golden standard, isn't he?
Unbelievably, yeah.
So, Mark, this podcast is all about success, and as such, everyone that we speak to, we ask them, what does success mean to you?
I think it is living your life on your own terms, and I don't know if anyone else experiences, but I think we're surrounded by so much negativity in life. Like I've stopped now. I stopped a few years ago. I changed my whole morning routine. I used to get up, put the news on, and get in my car, go to work, and I'd want to kill myself before 8:30 in the morning because it was so depressing. And I changed everything, what I did in the day and everything, and started reading books on self-development. And people would say, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like the guy said, you'll never be able to walk. When I do the charity fundraisers, you can't bungee jump because it's not safe, and you can't do this. And I was like, well, I can, but I just need to figure it out a different way. And then I started doing it and realising that a lot of this stuff was just people's opinions, and it was stopping me living life on my terms the way I wanted to do it. And the more I got on with it, I thought, you know what? I'm in charge of this. You can tell me your opinion, you can tell me what you think's going to happen, but ultimately I'm the only one that can decide and make it happen. So to me, success is living life on your own terms, doing what you want to do, and being happy doing it. And have the job you want to have, make money the way you want to make it, doing podcasts or YouTubing, whatever it is you want to do, whatever you're passionate about, figure that out and make a success out of it, which is exactly what we were talking about before we went on air, which I'm transitioning into now. And all the stuff I want to do, it's just a British thing. You go to America and everyone's walking around with a camera in their face YouTubing. You do it here and everyone thinks you're a weirdo. But now I'm just at this point where I'm like, you know what, I enjoy doing it, I want to do it, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm living it, on my terms.
Yeah.
So do you think, in a perverse way, that doctor, by saying you can't do something, gave you almost like reverse inspiration to prove him wrong and say, you know what, fuck you, mate, I am going to do this?
Not at all. No. People ask me that all the time when I finish like a talk, when I'm up wherever I am doing a speech or a talk. People say, do you think he said that with an underlying motive to motivate you? And my response every time is no, he was just a dick. And I don't think he was, but he'd been doing it for 33 years, and I think he was so emotionally turned off to it, it was no different to you guys checking your email. He just was like, here's another one walking, sorry mate, you never walk again, what's for lunch? So I don't think he did that, and that's not the effect it had on me anyway. I got very depressed after he told me that.
Yeah.
But it was meeting Mick, the other amputee with the prosthetics, and then researching the guys and eventually going to meet Cameron over in America, the triple amputee. That's what motivated me and got me fired up, because I genuinely believe if, unless you're born with a severe disability, we're all pretty much the same. So if you guys can achieve something, there's no reason I can't do exactly the same if I just figure out how you did it. And that's what I thought when I saw Mick and Cameron. I thought, well, they've done it. So all I've got to do is figure out physically and mentally what steps they took, basically copy them, and I'll get the same or similar results.
So some scope for improvement at that hospital, perhaps retrain that doctor not to be so blunt and hard about things.
When I was in Singapore a couple of years ago, and I replied to that question in that way, a man at the back of the room stood up, and it was really dark. I was at like a charity gala, and he was slurring, so I knew he was drunk, and he said, yeah, he is a dickhead. So I thought, someone knows the guy, the sergeant that was talking to me. So I went and found this guy afterwards in the bar, and he told me that he had been taken off the military ward and put on the geriatrics ward now, because he was telling everyone that got injured after me the same thing. I don't know why the poor geriatrics got to deal with him, but he said, he was telling everyone the same thing. He was just going in there non-emotionally saying, I'm sorry, you're in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, start figuring it out. And loads of people were just getting depressed because of it. So
I think what you said there was really interesting about modelling people that have already done what you want to achieve. And I think there's real parallels with that in the business and investing world. If someone has done it themselves, then there's a way that you can work out how they went about doing it and to mirror and model that behaviour. I think that's completely correct and sort of really inspirational as well, because that's exactly it. If there's no reason, no matter what people tell you, someone else has done it.
We were talking about Gary Vaynerchuk before we came on air, and that's nowhere near that intensity, because that guy's just phenomenal. But that's the kind of route I want to go down now, with the videographer and the podcast, and just documenting my life for everyone to see. And I've had emails over the years of people. It's really humbling, when they email you and say, I saw you on this video, or how'd you say that, and it really helped me out. And now I just kind of feel like the more I get it out there, the more people can help. That may sound a bit arrogant, but it just feels natural to me to do this now,
But it's almost like you have a responsibility now.
I feel so, because, again, go back to Mick and Cameron, those guys, they didn't owe me anything. They came, Mick came to visit me in hospital off his own back. Cameron and his team gave up 3 weeks of their lives to train me over in America when I went there, and now I do owe it to pass that on forward and help other people that need the help.
I think you're doing a great job about it.
Thank you.
Fantastic, and hopefully we can help get the message out more as well. So, in terms of our listeners, is there one bit of advice that you would say is the most important thing that can help them achieve their success, whatever that might be?
Just what I said earlier. Live life on your terms. Don't take too much notice of the negative people and the naysayers. Get yourself around good people, motivated people, empowering people that think the way you do and potentially are on the same kind of mission that you're on. Always try and push yourself a little bit outside your comfort zone to get better and to grow, but keep that good core of people around you, and just go after what it is you want. Because everyone looks at all these A-list celebrities and they're so lucky. They're not lucky. Maybe there's a little bit of luck involved when they got there, but at the end of the day, they knew what they wanted and they went after it no matter what the score. And we can all do that, but like I said earlier, we just seem to be, our default is negativity. Oh, you can't do that. Yeah, you're right, I won't bother. Or, I didn't do it first time, so I'm not going to bother anymore. You just got to be relentless and, live life on your terms. Find out what it is that lights you up and then just go do it.
Just very, very quickly, Mark, do you think there's a difference in the mentality between Americans and British people? Do you think that perhaps British people are a little bit more sceptical, whereas Americans are more aspirational?
On a whole, I do, but again, it's an individual thing. Americans are just out there, they go after it, and they're not scared. We are a little bit more reserved, but not all of us. There are some phenomenal people that I've met in this country that are just out there, just killing it all the time.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Mark, I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
You're an inspirational person. I'm really glad you've spent time with us, and we will share your message as far as possible and hopefully inspire others as well. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you and to find out more information about your charitable work?
So I am a social media whore. I am on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. I have a personal Facebook, a professional Facebook. I'm just about to launch a new social media platform called Patreon. I have my website, markormrod.com, which has my contact details for my email, which is mark@markormrod.com. Failing all of that, if you want my mobile number, it is on the back of the toilet door in Jesters. But no, I just Google and all my details are there. You can find me anywhere, and I'm always happy to do what I can to help.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and just to echo that, thank you so much for your time. It's been really, really inspirational, and a really, really great story. And the work you're doing now is fantastic, and some fantastic advice for our listeners as well. So that's great. But we want to know your thoughts and experiences on Mark's incredible journey. Drop us an email on hello@yoursuccesspodcast, or get in touch on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
So thank you again, Mark, for joining us, and thanks to you at home for listening to Your Success Podcast. Please click subscribe, leave us a review, and we look forward to your comments on the Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So I've been Angelos.
And I've been Mo.
And see you again on the next exciting episode of Your Success Podcast.
You have been listening to Your Success Podcast. Click subscribe for more incredible content. More details can be found at www.yoursuccesspodcast.com.